Apologies, I didn't mean for this to be in two sections, but I seem to have pressed off. This is where we were. I was cutting out this piece of fabric. These are the lines we drew earlier on. So they are parallel. 2.5 inches was the right amount. On the original fabric, it was looking like that. And the shape we have now is a lozenge shape. Our straight grain is running along here and along here, and then these bits are on the bias, and we can see that they're on the bias because if I fold it, we can see I've a nice bit of stretch in there. We've left some material there and on this side for a seam allowance, and that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to fold it to bring the raw edges together. And this is where it gets a little bit fiddly, because we're going to have to manipulate it in a way that it doesn't really want to go. And what we're going to do is we're going to line up the raw edges, the seam allowances and the cutting marks for our bias. So the easiest way I find to do this is to have a pin, put it through one of the cross marks, then check the other side, and we want it to go through another cross mark which we have here. Not quite, so we'll just move it over a little bit. There we go. So we've got those two cross marks on top of each other, and we're going to bring them together, and then we're going to pin that firmly. Now, because I've used the dark pen and the fabric's quite light, you can almost see through it. So we've got cross mark there and there. They're straight grains, so we bring them together. Use our pin again. We go through one side and we want to come up on that one there. So I'll just need to manipulate it a little bit. Once you've got the first couple in, the rest should fall into place quite nicely. Famous last words, of course. There. And pin it. So we've got the first two pinned there. Now, the thing to note, which is really important, is that this is not even. So I have one length hanging out this end, and that will match up there. So I'll pin that together. And then, because we've done the same number of stripes, you will see when we get to the other end, we also have a full width hanging out. So what we'll do now is we will pin, and again we want that cross to match up with that one there, which it just about does. We'll just put a pin in place to hold it there. So now you have a tuber fabric that doesn't want to lie properly, and that's good because you don't want it to lie properly really, because you've got this seam. However, if I put it like this, you'll see that once we've got this pinned up, you've got your tube of fabric here. This is going to be the seam line. You've got an ear of fabric sticking out here, and you've got a matching ear of fabric sticking out here. So I'm just going to pin it in place slightly more securely so I can show you. Here we are, so you can see I've pinned this together along the seam line, and once that's done, you can tack it in place, and whilst you're tacking you can make sure that the seams line up quite nicely. Then machine it. When it's machined, it needs to be on a fairly short stitch, and the reason for that is it needs to be quite strong, because once we finish the stitching, what we're going to do is cut it open. And you can see, I hope fairly clearly from this shot, once we've stitched down here, we can start cutting on this line, and as you cut and you turn, you'll find it spirals all the way through the fabric, and what you're left with then is this sort of thing. So this is one I did the other day. You can see my pen marks on it still, and you can see the joins run diagonally, so that's quite handy when you're folding. You're not getting anything too bulky. And I've done 3 V-necks with this already, and you can see I've actually got quite a bit of fabric left. It took me maybe 20 minutes to do, so it doesn't take long. The hardest or longest bit really is drawing these lines. If you don't have a quilter's rule, and it does, I must say, make it much easier because you've got the angles here, then it would be fairly straightforward to do with a the corner of a piece of card or something, which you then split in half, or if you do a piece of paper, fold it and fold it again, you can get a 45-degree angle. Or perhaps you've got a set square set lurking about the house. Once you've got the first line in place, then it's really quite straightforward to measure 2.5 inches from each line and then join the dots pretty much. It's worth spending some time at this stage to make sure that all your lines are even and they all join up. Sew this short stitch, press it, then press it to one side. It just makes it a bit easier later, and you can see all of these lines are going to join up. So when I cut, I'll get one nice long piece of bias binding. Hope you find that useful. Thanks.